Hi, I'm Nikki Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work, and life in a more successful and sustainable way. Welcome to this episode. I'm your host, Nikki Lowe, Executive and Leadership Coach. And in today's episode, I'm going to be diving into a common question that we get asked as working mothers. The question is, how do you do it all? That juggling act of balancing work, family, and your personal life. But it's a tricky question to explore because it can be a loaded question. And I know that there will be some people listening that just don't like the question because it's not a question that men get asked. And it's certainly not a question that working fathers get asked. Probably because traditionally the answer for most men on how they've managed it all would be that they had a wife at home doing everything, and their wife would be holding the emotional and mental load of the family and the home for them. But I think it's an important question for us to ask our fellow working mums, because with more mothers working than ever, how we balance our work and home responsibilities is still a sticking point for so many of us. And asking the question makes the invisible visible. It's almost like seeing how we each navigate the invisible load, either normalising that it's not easy or learning from each other. But I do understand that for some, it can be triggering. It can feel like we're stereotyping that the mother is carrying the invisible load, and that might not be the case. It can also feel like there's an implicit judgment behind the question, or that someone has got to justify their choices or prove their ability, which is not my reason for asking it here. Or the question kind of perpetuates the notion that women are primarily responsible for managing both their careers and families. And asking the question can seem to almost reinforce that gender stereotype, which again is not my intention for exploring it. I'm approaching this question from the perspective that if most working mums are still carrying the majority of the family and domestic responsibilities, how do we navigate our careers in a way that supports us to thrive? And I know from my work with the Global Leadership Wellbeing Solutions team, where we measure the wellbeing of executives using the Global Leadership Wellbeing Survey across the globe, we get to see the data trends on well-being around the world, and a trend that is still very prevalent is that women experience greater work-life conflict. We're less comfortable with the amount of time we spend working, and our work days feel like a race, and we're at greater risk of burnout compared to males. And we're more likely to report that family responsibilities and personal matters can spill over and negatively impact us while we're at work. And women report that we are significantly more likely to experience tensions and challenges with juggling the volume of personal commitments and responsibilities. Sound familiar? I know it does for me. As I've recorded this episode and I reflect on the last week, it's the summer school holidays. I've been juggling the kids' activities with 2 different age children. So their kind of camps and activities haven't aligned, while also trying to do that with my work. We organised a trip to London for my daughter's birthday earlier in the year. She wanted to go and see Frozen the musical, and we've been organising that. I'd booked the train, but the train got cancelled at the last minute due to industrial strikes. So I've been having to arrange all the new travel arrangements. And we've got 2 puppies, so I'd organised for them to go to the dog sitters while we went to London. But my one dog has come into season for the first time. And as the dog sitter's got a male dog that hasn't been neutered, I've had to arrange at the last minute kind of where that puppy's going to go. I've been planning for the return to school uniform. I've been organising for a wasp nest in the garden to be removed. It's been my mother-in-law's birthday, so I've been organising a present and a meal out for the family. And each time I've had a window to complete my work, a domestic thought or responsibility has been hijacking that time. And I felt like my irritation levels go up. And it's because I'm multitasking. I'm feeling that erosion of boundaries between my work and my life. And I felt pulled in all those different directions. And it's interesting, I've recently been reading a book called Fed Up by the journalist Gemma Hartley, and it's all about the emotional labour that women carry in their families and home. And she came to write this book after an article she wrote that kind of just got went viral because she was talking about women aren't nagging, we're just fed up. And in the book, she talks about the deep social expectation that women will shoulder the exhausting mental and emotional work at home, a type of labour that goes largely unnoticed by those it benefits most, has made it all too easy for such insidious expectations to follow us into the world as we step gingerly through a culture that's left us little choice in the matter. And for many of the women I speak to, this is their lived experience too, that work, family and life integration isn't easy. Now, there isn't a magic wand to all of this. For many women, there are psychosocial factors at play, meaning the systemic, cultural, ingrained factors that aren't all within our control. As Judith Schultz shared in her New York Times article on the mental and an emotional load for mothers, whether a woman loves or hates worry work, as she calls it, it can scatter her focus on what she does for pay and knock her partway or clean way off a career path. This distracting grind of apprehension and organisation may be one of the least movable obstacles to women's equality in the workplace. And the irony is not lost on me that as I'm recording this episode, it's an inset day at my children's school and one of my children has come in and interrupted me. So I'm living this in real time. So what can we do about this? We can't shift society, our culture and our lived experience on our own and all at once. But we can take responsibility for the kind of life we want to lead and what are the factors that are within our control and that we can do something about. And our ability to thrive as working mothers lies in that intricate balance and often very complex ways in which we combine all those various demands that are placed on us in all aspects of our lives. It's what we call in the Global Leadership Wellbeing Survey, balance and boundaries. So how do we combine living well and working well? And if you're someone who is highly conscientious, someone who feels overly responsible and is hyper independent, it's likely you're trying to do it all without help and do it all perfectly. And you don't need me to tell you what that is a recipe for. But sometimes just remembering that our tendencies can trip us up gives us more choices on how we navigate this stuff. You know, over the years, I've learned to let go of being so hyper independent and I ask for more help. I've also started to push back on the gender norms that me and my husband unconsciously fell into. And it's still work in progress. So here's how I manage it all. You know, I work flexibly around my kids. I run my own business. So one of the benefits of that is I get more flexibility. So sometimes I'm an early morning person. So sometimes I'm at my best working early in the morning. And it means that I kind of carry on working after I collect them from after school club. I have a cleaner, a gardener, a window cleaner to help me around the house. And I also have a small team in my business that supports me to do all the stuff, like amazing John that edits my podcast, amazing Laura, who's my podcast manager that helps me get this out into the world. I also have a mother-in-law, and although she's in her early 80s, if I need to, she is amazing to help me with the after-school clubs if I need to. I have a husband who manages the evening kids' activities. I batch cook because it's the only way I can feed my family in a healthy kind of way without losing my sanity after school. And my kids probably have more screen time than I'm happy with sometimes if I have work to do. And I book in regular self-care because if it's not booked in, I don't do it. So I have a personal trainer, I have monthly reflexology, and I have to take time to soothe my nervous system because if I don't, I get caught up in fight and flight, I get rigid, I become hyper independent, and I fall into all those unhelpful tendencies. So soothing my nervous system helps me create like psychological flexibility so I don't get too stressed out and irritated. And this is an important conversation to have, and one that I love that National Work-Life Week that's coming up at the beginning of October is addressing too. If you've not come across National Work-Life Week, it's an annual campaign run by the charity Working Families, and it gets both employers and employees talking about well-being at work and work-life balance. And this is now more important than ever because there's a rising research, like the data of research that's coming out post-pandemic, because we know that the pandemic was brutal for most working parents. But one of the positive outcomes was was the change in working patterns. So companies said that, work couldn't be flexible or remote, realised that it had to be and could be. So we've seen a huge rise in flexible working, remote working and hybrid working. But these changes in our work-life blending have offered real significant benefits to working parents. And I know many of you listening will have felt this, the increased flexibility, the improvement in well-being and more time with our family and friends, combined with the productivity and cost savings for organisations. However, as I say, there's this emerging kind of body of research that's suggesting that these benefits are also shared with a more unhelpful reality. And some of our pandemic era expectations and habits aren't necessarily serving working parents well, and some are actually less than helpful. And that's why I'm collaborating with the brilliant Anita Clear of the Positive Parenting Project to address this. We're hosting a webinar called Supporting Working Parents, Insights for the Post-Pandemic Era. And as the rewriting of these work patterns progresses, we'll be sharing insights into how we support working parents so they can benefit from the advantages of these ways of working, whilst avoiding the potential pitfalls. And during this online webinar, which is absolutely free, you'll learn evidence-based insights on the impact of the post-pandemic working patterns on working parents. You'll gain clarity on the questions you need to consider to ensure long-term success for post-pandemic working patterns. And we'll explore strategies for supporting working parents to make it a win-win for both employees and organisations. And you can join us for what I know is going to be a really thought-provoking discussion. You'll get to learn, interact and share with other organisations. And as I say, it's completely free. It's taking place on Tuesday, the 26th of September, 2023 at 12:30 British Summer Time. And you can find all the details and the link for it in the show notes to this podcast episode if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk/117, because this is episode 117 of the podcast. So it's wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk/117. And if you've not yet come across Anita and her work, I think you're going to love her. So Anita Clear is a parenting writer, speaker and coach. She's the author of The Work Parent Switch, How to Parent Smarter, Not Harder, which is also known as the Working Parent Survival Guide in the US. She writes the Thinking Parents advice blog and is director of the Positive Parenting Project. And honestly, the work that she's putting into the world for working parents on how we parent in the most positive way is just brilliant. So I hope this episode has been useful. One where I've kind of shared insights into making the invisible visible as a working mum is really important. One where I've shared insights into how I manage it all. And I'd love to hear from you. How do you do it all? Maybe you're just surviving, and hearing that others struggle too just helps to normalise it and take away the guilt or any shame you might be feeling about not having it all together. Or maybe you've developed strategies that help you manage the invisible load and you'd like to share so others can learn from you on how you manage it all. So do get in touch, as I'm always keen to share real life stories and experiences with my audience. And as always, thanks for being here with me. I never take your time for granted. And until next time, take care. If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too. So if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.